We now move on to the keynote sessions, which are featuring a diverse lineup of influential leaders. For the very first keynote, we'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Mohit Rampal, Ramogini Technologies, to share his insights on the topic, Shaping Cybersecurity 2030 and Beyond Through Digital Resurgence. Please put your hands together and welcome Mohit on stage.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning. I think we still got 15 minutes till noon. Yesterday we were here at the DSCI, and the first thing, somebody from the policymakers asked me, what are you going to talk about 2030 when we are not even able to solve the problem for 2023? So I said, very simply, I said, if you are predictable, you are hackable. I'm sure everybody of you watches one of the English movies, and I'm sure you can trace it out. Where does this sentence come from? And another important thing which I always talk about is you measure what you treasure. So same thing goes back to cybersecurity. Most of the deck is non-visual. I've just put in statements, phrases of different people. So we're talking about shaping 2030. There's also going to be a small story which I'm going to share about, which I feel is going to happen in the next couple of decades. It's a famous statement from Martina Navratilova. Security used to be an inconvenience, but now is a necessity. We all can see it. It's no longer that you got to live without security, right? I think yesterday there was an open house by CERT, and they were talking about how the organizations, how people are need to getting into security. When we used to sell security way back in 90s, it was a necessity. It was not a necessity. We had to literally tell people that, you know, you're going to about to die tomorrow of cancer, then they would buy security. Same thing goes. Today, security has got to be a very essential item. Now, what do we look at in 2030? What's the next decade looking like? Whatever investments people are making, I was just listening to the panelists right now with Mr. Dubey and the rest of them. They were talking about, we are making investments into platform as a service, security as a service, information as a service. One question is cloud as a service. But only difference I personally feel, cloud is just another marketing gimmick which has just been used to get people to move. Why? Somebody was losing business. No names taken. But yes, big organization lost business, they moved to cloud. So whatever has happened is now converging back in 2023. I spoke to a couple of CISOs since morning, today and yesterday, and all of them are saying, we have invested on CapEx and OpEx. Now is the time to, get the payoffs. 2030 is when they're going to really see some payoffs happening in their investments. We're not going to be talking about defending. We all know the perimeter security. So how it's built up from 1990 till date, right? You had a firewall, everybody's spoken about it, I won't repeat it again. Now what's happening in 2030? We are talking about defending is no longer going to be there. You know you're going to be attacked. You're going to be preparing yourself to figure out what to do to ensure that you're not going to be compromised. It's not about just putting up a defense establishment in place to have a defense coming in place. It's about building up the infrastructure and resilience into the system. We are also going to look at cybersecurity, the basic hygiene. I was discussing with a CISO in the morning from one of the large public sector banks. And in 2018, RBI came out with a circular which says API security is to be done and you got to do blah, blah, blah. So he says, it's happening. And I asked him a single question, simple one. How many banks globally are actually deploying an API security solution or doing something else? The answer was, it's less than a percentage of the population of banks which are doing that. That only global. In India, it's still zero. It's still zero, right? So we are moving towards more onto the segment where we are talking about having a little more of cybersecurity becoming a basic hygiene. We were, on June 26th, I was in one of the meetings which was done by MIT, right, where we learned something new, which is, as a country, we are spending huge amounts of money to educate people on cyber hygiene, right? Don't do that. If you look at your newspapers every day in the morning, some of you may not be looking into it, but you do look into it. It talks about ICICI is running a campaign, Standard Chartered is, HDFC is running a campaign. Don't fall tricks to cyber guys trying to hack you, as you talk about it. We're also going to be looking at 2030, where it's going to be a cashless community. Thanks to people like Vijay Shekhar, who got Paytm and everything out here. We're going towards that. But as we move towards 2030, we're going to look at crypto. but a more formulated value of crypto. It's not going to be that undefined crypto where the crypto coin is, it's more expensive than the stock market price right now for most of the companies. And regulations, of course, we're talking about. This is, most of my presentation is going to be about statements, and I'm going to put some relation to it. So computers, hackers do not need to know each other's real names. That's what's happening right now. Panelists spoke about, yesterday also people spoke about what's happening. In the morning today, we had somebody from a large company which came to me and asked this question to my team. And he says, what's happening now is that the attacks are now domain specific. As a hacker, I do not need to know who the end user is. I just need to be a domain specific hacker. I'm going to be hired by some state-sponsored terrorist or a financial company just to get into a system, right? The next war, as we know, is going to be a digital war. It's no longer going to be talking about how do I hack into the system. I don't need to know if there's a gentleman sitting here from a defense force or a gentleman sitting from anywhere. As long as I know his digital identity, I'm good to go. I can hack, right? That's what we're going to look into in 2030, right? What are we talking about in this? We have a lot of Indian Make in India, NCOE sponsored. We have OTP-less, which is going to be happening. We're already working towards, in our organization, we are going green. We also believe in going passwordless. We are already implementing it into our systems as we speak. We want to go into more onto DevSecOps as we talk about it. Cashless community means a little more on more secured infrastructure for getting the cash. So cryptocurrency and all these things are going to be there in reality. You're no longer going to be carrying a credit card. I still remember this was in 2003 and 4. I was in this company called Rainbow Technology / SafeNet, now Thales. So there were 3 of us, Dr. Vidyasagar, TCS Gachibowli, and me. We were writing a small statement paper. This is much before our Aadhaar came into place. We were trying to see if everything can come into one single card, a simple card. That means my passport, my digital identity, everything is there. That technically means I can go cashless to every extent. I could even put a biometric or a finger scanner onto that simple device, or I could even put a small embedded chip or a retina scanner, right? In that same device, I can still put in other things. If I have multiple devices connected, I was just talking to this friend of mine who was here with us from Team Camry yesterday. He wears a band on his finger. That band is connected to his Apple phone, which tells him exactly when is he supposed to, when his sugar levels are going down. It also tells him when does he need to go to exercise, right? It also communicates effectively. Another friend of mine, he's in Bombay, he has diabetes, so he went to the US, so he got a diabetic meter put on his body, on his arm. That tells him exactly when does he need to take his insulin shots. I'm just telling you what 2030 is. That population today is 1%. This population today, which is going to be without security, without, I would say, these devices, people like me, I'm a technologist, but I use the minimal amount of devices as far as possible, is going to be 1%. So 2030 will have people who would be tampered or who can be tampered easily. We're talking about cybercrime. It's already growing. We are not talking about something new. But yes, it's going to be protecting the integrity. Organizations like we had just a couple of minutes ago, they're not going to be talking about securing anything past as a service. They're going to be wondering about not defending. They're going to wonder about what is missing in my process which I need to do. Kevin Mitnick, he expired last year. I'm sure all of you know he's a global hacker. Garbage. People do not even realize when they send information to the big vendors, when they say, I want to take your log file. I don't do that. In our company, we have a policy, no log files. In our company, we have implemented a policy which is, of course, we are not on cloud. I'm firmly not, I would say, a cloud follower. We have the entire development infrastructure in-house because you can call me that I have an obsessive disorder, right? I'm scared. It's not about scared. I'm scared not of people cheating me of my intellectual property. Because any garbage which goes out, so when we buy in hardware from our vendors, we follow the same policy as the defense establishment will follow. Keep your hard disk, right? I may spend 20% more money on my AMC, but for me that's security. Why? Because that garbage can be used by somebody who gets hold of my hard disk to get some information. We have people like Stella, you can retrieve information, but my team can retrieve enough information from a dead hard disk, right? So it's important. Don't let your garbage go out because that's going to be important for your company's security. What do we have in this across? We're talking about governments across the globe. You've already seen this happening in the last 1.5, 2 years. We had the GDPR compliance coming around 5-7 years ago. In India, luckily, we've got getting our data security bill in terms of securing my data. I walk to a shop with my wife, and she wants to put the number for getting points. I refuse. Why? Because my personal information is getting leaked, because he has access to my card, he knows my last 4 digits. Somebody in the darknet will leak my information, and he or she can get hold of my phone number, right? So it's all interlinked across to us. I refuse to go to a building where they ask me, we go to a government building, he says, you have to submit your Aadhaar. So I now carry my master Aadhaar card. I don't want to disclose my Aadhaar because it's all linked. For you, it may appear as a garbage data. For me, it's my information, my personal information. So regulations are going to be very, very instrumental. I think some people from regulatory were here yesterday, and they also spoke about it. I think DG Sir, Dr. Behel, and Mr. S.S. Sarma spoke about these activities that, yes, everything is going to be more on security as we talk about. Connected society, IoT, everybody talks about IoT, everybody talks about generative AI. We were in GITEX, every third stall was generative AI. It looks like a motherhood statement. We're not talking about generative AI. We don't follow AI. We still believe the old-fashioned way of coding using our fingers. So we have connected devices. I'm just coming to a small, simple story out here, which is right after this. Hackers will be able to maintain data. My daughter studies in the US. She's doing a PhD in molecular and cellular biology. She also is doing a course on Python with Django and with AI ML, right, for a specific reason. Recently in the US, there was a company which was doing DNA synthesis. Just think about it, because my next story is going to be talking about all this activity. Let's assume we are in 2030. 99% except me in the population doesn't have a device on body. I don't have a device for my handband. I don't have a mobile phone. I don't carry that Google smartwatch. I don't let Google know where I'm traveling. I use my basic sense of you reading an old-fashioned defense way of reading a map, going to the city. I will not use Google, because Google knows exactly what I'm doing. So does Microsoft, so does every single company which is carrying your information. So my story goes a little way out here, which goes with Bruce Schneider. You all know about this gentleman, right? If you think technology can solve your problems, right, security, then it means you don't understand the problems and you don't understand technology. It's a good statement. This is what the previous, I would say the panelists also said. Even yesterday, I have a good friend sitting here, Rishi, he was also talking about the same thing. Most of the people are talking exactly the same language. But what we see is 2030 is going to be what? There's going to be one single, I would say, a simple small story. We are in 2030, 99% of this population sitting inside this room has a device plugged into it, which tells them exactly when do they need to eat, when do they need to know when the sugar levels are going down, if their BP is going up, when do they need to pick up and have a glass of water, right? How are they all going to communicate? They're all going to communicate through something called application program interface, or APIs as we call it, which means I can compromise every single person in this room because I can get into any API. Where does all this data go into? It goes into a centralized system. What do? I get into a system where I have everybody's go to the dark web. We have got so many vendors in the dark web talking about dark web data. And then we have a threat intelligence solution coming into place to figure out how many of the people do I want to compromise and how do I want to kill. Russians are good in doing it, right? I'm sure all of you read the papers, right? So Russians do it, right? They understand the DNA. So for example, if I want somebody down, I don't need to kill him. All I need to figure out is get hold of his DNA, which is available in the DNA bank, which I get to compromise, and then just launch a simple attack because I know he uses a Philips device to monitor himself. All I send is a Philips device which says, your glucose levels are going down, you need sugar. So what does he do? He takes sugar. I send another message which says, it's still going down, you have some more. What does he have? He has a diabetic attack immediately and he has got a heart failure. So who's responsible for it? Nobody. The state-sponsored terrorist has been able to compromise a human being. So the next war in 2030 is not going to be talking about data only. It's also going to talk about how do we compromise human beings. Do I want to get an Indian army or whatever, the US army to go and fight a war? Yes, that war will still continue. Ukraine is still doing it. Look at the number of drones being sent across. Everybody is shooting. The best thing I like about the Ukraine and Russian war is the guys who created it on the other side too. So they know each other's weakness. If you go back to my slide number 3, I talked about the same point. Hackers do not need to know. They already know what Russia has, Ukraine knows already what they have. So each one knows. It's going to be the cyberspace. So the simple story goes, 99% of the people in 2030 could be easily compromised without anybody launching an attack. All we need to know is what devices do they do. All those devices get information from people like Gartner, etc., and says, these are the top device manufacturers who are using the best healthcare system in the world. If you want to buy your best diabetic meter, go down to vendor number one because Gartner is going to make money out of this. So what are the other vendors? So what do I need to do? I need to figure out a way to get that data, right? So what do I mean? You treasure what you measure. So the hacker treasures that information. So he's going to find a way to attack. Simple, just about our company, our vision is making security simple. I had one of the CXOs walking up to my booth yesterday and I asked this question, how do you make security simple? And my answer was, in late 90s and early 20s, 2000, right? When I was in this company, Rainbow, we had to position security. So we would make it happen like as if the person is about to die, right? So what happened is in that era, till 2004, 5, I would say 2015, people still started using the same way to position technology. So CXOs got smarter, and they said, we're not going to die. Tell us what you have. But the amount of technical jargon I have heard is so humongous. It takes me 1.5 hours to understand what does that product do. I'm a technologist with 3 decades in cyber. I understand I've been into every faceted life of cyber from a smart card, digital identity, iKeys, all the way to digital security, SOAR, SIMs, name it. I've spent my hands on each, hands-on as a CXO, right? So if it's taking me time to understand, I'm wondering what happens to the poor CISO. He is going to take years to understand what technology fits inside. So what we do as a company is, we try to make it simple, in as easy as a layman word to help him understand what is the problem we solve. Our vision and mission is innovate and create, and develop and create. We are innovating. We are not saying we are going to innovate something new. Innovation is a very good English. It goes back to one Amitabh Bachchan movie, English is a funny language. I'm sure all of you have seen that movie, right? So same thing out here, innovate. We are innovating. We are partners to some global technologies, but at the same time, we are creators. We have created close to around 3 made in India products. As we speak, we are on the verge of having 2 more released in the next 6 months. We go with a very simple establishment. We're not a very large team. We're around 65 people. We don't have sales. We don't do sales. We only make technology, which can be used by Indians. So there was somebody in the morning, the CISO asked me this question. I said, AT&T took out a mandate in 2014 and said, if you want to sell to me, you got to have your product technically evaluated using these 4 technologies. I asked the CISO, why don't you make it a mandate? And the answer comes is, we have got a grandfather called CVC, right? In CVC, there's nobody from the government out here, but CVC, we need somebody from CVC to understand why do we need to mandate that? Why do we need to always work on an L1, L2, L3, right? So our mission is to create as many Make in India solutions. On our platform, we also try and get a lot of people from DSCI and the NCOE to join us into our platform. Vibhor, I think I still have 2 minutes because I started a little late. Any questions? I'm going to answer them after the event at our booth number 11, just to keep Vibhor's time in mind.
Thank you so much. We have a token of our appreciation coming out to you.